Hey, good afternoon, everyone. A good nerve Shabbos. Wanted to talk a little bit about the dynamic life, and I wanted to have some insights on this week's Parshas Yisro, as well as Martin Luther King Day. I mentioned a few days ago about a difficult situation that I went through, being offended at an event that I was attending. Now, here was and I mentioned it before, but I feel that, just talking about these things and understanding, life, if life is always easy and life is always fun and life is always pleasant, then we miss out on the richness of life. And, sometimes these little things, that should be the worst thing. There could be much worse things that can happen in life than to be a little bit offended at an event by a speaker, and sometimes listening to different viewpoints, like William Rundle mentioned in the comments. We're not in an echo chamber. It's better not to be in an echo chamber. It's better to hear things that are different and to hear different perspectives. However, that doesn't change the fact that when someone feels truly offended, and rightfully so, I can compare, my walking out to Luis Gutierrez walking out when they were chanting USA, USA, and I feel he was wrong and I feel I was right. I still question my rightness, but I really don't question his wrongness, because he's a member of the U.S. Congress. Doesn't he love America? I don't understand why anyone in the Congress would be offended by USA, USA. All right, but we'll put that aside for now. That was at the State of the Union. For those who don't know, you can look it up. A few things that I want to talk about today, though. We see something phenomenal that Yisro, Jethro, the father-in-law of Moses, says. He says, "Now I know that the Lord is greater than all gods." And part of that would seem to indicate, and our rabbis seem to indicate, that Jethro tried out everything. He tried out every possible spiritual experience, and he came to the conclusion that the Lord is greater than all gods. Now, if you would think about it, a Midianite, that would seem to be the last person Moses would go to seek refuge with, and yet, a Midianite priest, and yet, their fellowship and their love for each other developed into a family relationship, and that he was an honored man, that he received a whole parsha to be given a name named after him in our Jewish tradition. Usually, Parshas don't have people's names. We have a Parsha Pinchas, we have a Parsha Yisro. The brotherhood between Yisro and Moses is very important. The Druze people today who live in the Levant and in the Holy Land are the people of Yisro, are the children of Jethro. Or at least that's what they claim, and I have no reason, even if they're not genetically, biologically the children of Jethro, they consider themselves to be the students of Jethro, and that's very important. And they very well might be genetically from Jethro, we don't know. It really doesn't matter. But something else I want to discuss about this issue that I had, being offended at an event and so forth, bring out of that is quite interesting. At this event, something we all know, it was mentioned that Dr. King met with Mahatma Gandhi and learned the lessons of nonviolence and from Gandhi, and nonviolent protest and so forth. This was something we heard all the time, going to school, going to public schools in Long Island and in Sullivan County, being taught about Dr. King. And it was something that it was constantly repeated to us as children. But something a lot of people don't know about Gandhi is that he had a lot of scandals in his life, and he had a history of racism. He supported apartheid, or whatever form it took in those days when he was actually a lawyer in South Africa. I don't know if they called it apartheid at the time or not. And he said some there are many very nasty quotes, very racist quotes that are attributed to Mahatma Gandhi. And yet, these two men were able to see beyond that. And Dr. King was able to learn things from Gandhi and not go say, oh, you're a racist. I don't know if at the time he was still a racist. Maybe it was something in his past. And make him a persona non grata. There were other scandals in Gandhi's past, and it seemed obvious that later in his life he regretted them. And it doesn't detract from the greatness of who Gandhi was and what he accomplished, even though there are many things we could question about Gandhi, and maybe we could question what kind of a role model he was. Yes, no. But we certainly cannot dismiss Gandhi. Because it's clear that Gandhi had a very important place in history, and he accomplished very great things with his place in history. And so too, there are many other people in history that we might disagree with, or might have checkered pasts, or might have racism, this and that. And the question is, do we have to totally dispose of them in history? Are there things, even from historical figures who have difficult parts of their life, that we can still respect, even people who we think are absolutely horrible? I mean, I certainly have been convinced by Glenn Beck that Woodrow Wilson is one of the worst people to ever have held the office of the presidency. And yet, I still have respect for certain things and for his ideals, even if I disagree with them. I don't really think the League of Nations or the United Nations are particularly great ideas. Particularly we see what kind of nonsense goes on there, how this dancing with the Palestinians, and I don't know what's going on. It's really silly. I cannot imagine, something like that. It just seems so ridiculous. But still, there is what to have respect for. It's the same thing. Different religions, different nationalities, different histories. There is tremendous reason why we should, be involved with respecting the people who have different views and different things. And not be so dismissive right away, because we see here, and this is something that I hope someday I can meet Dr. Fraser and discuss these issues with her, and hopefully open up some lines of communication of, why we have different views. There's another story that I really wanted to share, vis-a-vis Martin Luther King Day and so forth. I don't remember the name of the gentleman, but there was an amazing story that I heard. I believe it was on NPR, or although it might have been from Glenn Beck. That I don't remember. But there was and the fact that I'm not sure who I heard it from shows the universality of this story and the importance of the story. So there was an African American gentleman who was a musician. I believe he's still alive. I believe, and I think I told this story before, but I think it's such an important story that I find it worthwhile to share. Who, he would sing in different bars throughout the South and so forth. And he was sitting with one of the gentlemen there, and the fellow said to him, this is the first time I've ever shared, sat and had a drink with a black man. And he said, oh, that's interesting. Why is that? He said, well, to tell you the truth, and after they'd been sitting and talking for about 20 minutes or so, he said, well, I'm a member of the KKK. And this musician came to, sat and talked to him, and he developed a friendship with this fellow over the years. And eventually, this fellow said to him, he contacted this musician. He said, I want to give you something. He said, this is my hood, because I'm no longer a member of the KKK, and it's thanks to you. And this musician, he didn't have any agenda to change this person's mind. He was just seeing another man in the image of God, and he reached out to him, and they shared some time together, some fellowship as just two guys, and he changed his life. And he said over the years he wasn't the only one. He said there was probably about 16 or 17 men who gave their hoods. They left the KKK and gave their hoods to this African American musician. It reminds me of the story that I told in the invocation about meeting this gentleman who was from the Nation of Islam. You would think me and him, I would be scared to talk to him almost, and yet we see each other as human beings, and we were able to share a moment together, even though, and still we might disagree, and I didn't really change him and he didn't really change me as far as who we are. But I think we both changed each other as who we really are. And understanding things and reaching out and appreciating someone else being made in the image of God. And I think that's a big lesson of Parshas Yisro once again. Here we are as a kingdom of priests, a holy nation. We're here to give over what we have to give to the world, and we receive as well, because that's what we see from Jethro. That's the lesson of Jethro, that he was able to see things clearly because of his life experience and learn things that he would never have learned. And so let's all learn from Jethro to embody that message and to truly understand what it means, though, to be a part of a kingdom of priests and a holy nation, and to recognize that the Lord is great above all powers. Amen. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment, and all the best.